My name is Audrey, and I was 32 when I learned what family truly means. The day my kidney surgery was scheduled happened to be the exact same day as my sister Haley's destination wedding in Maui. I needed the surgery to live. My parents chose her wedding over my survival, leaving me alone during the scariest moment of my life. 5 years later, they showed up at my door broke and desperate, begging for help. They never saw my final move coming. If you are watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you are from and hit that subscribe button to join our community of survivors. My story might just change how you view family forever. I grew up in a middle-class suburban neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, in a blue house with white trim and a perfectly manicured lawn. My father, Richard, was always meticulous about appearances. As a successful attorney at one of the top firms in the city, he expected nothing less than perfection from everyone around him, especially his family. My mother, Patricia, was equally concerned with social status, serving on various charity boards and hosting dinner parties where everything had to be immaculate. In their world, perception was reality. My sister Haley arrived when I was 4 years old. From the moment my parents brought her home from the hospital, wrapped in a pink blanket with a tiny bow headband, something shifted in our family dynamic. I was too young to understand it then, but looking back, that was the beginning of the pattern that would define our family for decades. Haley was the golden child from day one. While I had my mother's plain brown hair and average features, Haley somehow won the genetic lottery with her naturally blonde curls and bright blue eyes. She was the child strangers would stop to compliment in grocery stores, the one whose baby pictures dominated our living room walls. As we grew older, the favoritism became more obvious and painful. When I was 9, I won first place in the state science competition with my project on renewable energy. My parents attended but left early because Haley, only 5 at the time, had a dance recital that evening. They took me for a quick ice cream on the way to her performance, then spent the rest of the night gushing about how beautiful she looked in her tutu while my certificate sat forgotten in the car. By high school, I had accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I became the responsible one, the achiever, the one who needed less attention because I was so independent, as my mother would say when forgetting to attend my honor society induction. Meanwhile, Haley struggled academically but excelled socially, becoming homecoming queen and dating the football captain. My parents attended every one of her games, holding signs and cheering loudly. While they missed my valedictorian speech because Haley had a minor cold that day. Despite everything, I loved my parents and desperately wanted their approval. I worked hard, graduated with honors, and earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university. I thought maybe then they would see me. They attended my graduation but spent most of the ceremony talking about Haley's college applications. I was 25 when I received my diagnosis of polycystic kidney disease. The doctor explained that cysts were growing on my kidneys, gradually impairing their function. It was genetic, though no one else in our family had shown symptoms. When I told my parents, there was a brief moment when I finally had their full attention. My father researched specialists, and my mother called daily to check on me. For once, I felt like they truly cared. The early treatments were expensive, even with insurance. My parents helped financially, covering some of the medications and procedures. I was grateful and believed that when it really mattered, they would be there for me. This created a false sense of security that I would later regret trusting. During this time, I met Nathan at a hospital fundraiser. He worked in healthcare administration and had the kindest eyes I had ever seen. On our first date, I nervously told him about my condition, expecting him to run. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions and shared that his mother had dealt with chronic illness. He understood in a way few people could. Within 6 months, we moved in together, creating the stable, loving home I had always craved. Meanwhile, Haley had graduated college with average grades and immediately met Justin, a wealthy real estate developer whose family had connections throughout the West Coast. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a proposal after just 8 months of dating. When she flashed her 4-carat diamond ring at our family dinner, my parents practically exploded with excitement. What followed was an endless parade of engagement parties, bridal showers, and wedding planning discussions. My father casually mentioned they were allocating $75,000 for the wedding, an amount that made me choke on my water given that they had recently asked me to pay a larger portion of my medical bills because their budget was tight. Still, I tried to be happy for my sister. I attended her events, helped address invitations, and listened to her debate between ivory and eggshell for hours. I believed that family meant supporting each other, even when it hurt. I had no idea how one-sided that support would turn out to be. By the time I turned 32, my condition had deteriorated significantly. The medication was no longer managing the growth of the cysts, and my kidney function had dropped to dangerously low levels. After a particularly bad episode that landed me in the emergency room, my nephrologist Dr. Maxwell scheduled an urgent appointment. The medical building was cold that day, or maybe it was just my fear making me shiver. Dr. Maxwell, a tall woman with prematurely gray hair and compassionate eyes, reviewed my latest test results with a gravity I had never seen from her before. "Audrey, I need to be direct with you," she said, turning her computer screen so I could see the images of my kidneys. "These cysts have grown substantially. Your kidney function is down to 20%. We need to schedule surgery immediately to remove the largest cysts and potentially save the left kidney. Without intervention, you are looking at complete kidney failure within months." The word months echoed in my head as she continued explaining the procedure. I would need at least a week in the hospital followed by several months of recovery. There was also a risk of complications, as with any major surgery. "When do we need to do this?" I asked, my mouth dry. Dr. Maxwell checked her calendar. "We have an opening with our surgical team on June 12th. I know that is only 3 weeks away, but given your condition, I strongly recommend we take that slot." I froze. June 12th. The date was immediately familiar because it had been mentioned constantly in our family for the past year. June 12th was Haley's wedding day. "Is there any other date available?" I asked weakly. She shook her head. "Not with this surgical team. Who are the best for your specific case? The next opening would be nearly 2 months away, and frankly, I am not comfortable waiting that long given your kidney function." I left the appointment in a daze, immediately calling Nathan, who promised to meet me at home as soon as possible. Then, with shaking hands, I called my parents. They would have to understand the severity of the situation. In my mind, I already imagined how we would work it out. Perhaps my father would stay with me for the surgery while my mother attended the wedding. It would be disappointing but manageable. That evening, I sat at my parents' dining table, the same one where we had celebrated countless birthdays and holidays. The familiar scent of my mother's pot roast filled the air as I explained the situation. "So the surgery is scheduled for June 12th, I concluded, looking between them expectantly. "I know it is Haley's wedding day, but Dr. Maxwell says this cannot wait." There was a long silence. My father cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses the way he did when preparing to deliver a difficult verdict in court. "Audrey, you understand that we have been planning this wedding for over a year. Everything is booked. The deposits are non-refundable." I stared at him, not quite comprehending. "Dad, this is a life-saving surgery." My mother reached across the table, patting my hand in what I suppose she thought was a comforting gesture. "Sweetie, do you think there is any way you could reschedule? Just by a few weeks?" "No," I said firmly. "Dr. Maxwell said this team is the best, and they do not have another opening for 2 months. She does not think my kidneys can wait that long." Another silence fell. My parents exchanged a look I had seen many times before, the one that excluded me from whatever decision they were silently making. Finally, my father spoke. "We have to be at Haley's wedding. She needs both of us there on her special day. And I need you for my surgery," I countered, my voice rising slightly. "I could have complications. I am terrified." My mother's expression softened, but not in the way I needed. "You have Nathan, dear. He will take wonderful care of you. And Haley has put so much into this wedding. She would be devastated if we were not there." I could not believe what I was hearing. "So you're both choosing to be at her wedding instead of my surgery? A wedding that could be postponed versus a surgery that cannot wait." It is not that simple, my father said sternly. There are 150 guests flying to Maui. The venue has been booked for a year. Everything is arranged. And my life? Where does that fit into your arrangements? I asked, tears forming despite my best efforts to remain composed. My mother looked uncomfortable. You are being dramatic, Audrey. The doctors will take good care of you. We will fly back immediately after the reception and come straight to the hospital. You will only be without us for a day or two. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Do you hear yourselves? Your daughter might die on an operating table, and you are worried about a reception. My father's face hardened. That is enough. We have helped you with your medical bills for years. We have been supportive. But we cannot revolve our entire lives around your health issues. Haley deserves her special day. I left their house in tears, calling Nathan from the car. He was furious on my behalf, promising that he would be there every step of the way. We do not need them, he said firmly. I will take care of everything. The next day, I received an unexpected call from my Uncle Douglas, my father's brother whom we rarely saw due to a long-standing family disagreement. Somehow, he had heard about my surgery. Audrey, I wanted you to know that I will be there, he said gruffly. Your aunt and I can sit in the waiting room with Nathan. No one should go through this alone. His kindness broke something in me, and I sobbed openly on the phone. This man who I barely knew was willing to show up while my own parents were not. My coworker Stephanie also stepped up, rearranging her vacation days to help during my recovery. We will create a schedule, she insisted. Someone will always be with you. As the surgery date approached, I made one last attempt to speak with my parents. I visited their home unannounced, finding my mother addressing thank you cards for Haley's bridal shower gifts. Mom, please, I said, sitting beside her. I am scared. I need you there when I wake up from surgery. She sighed, putting down her pen. Audrey, we have been through this. Your sister has dreamed of this wedding since she was a little girl. We cannot let her down. And what about letting me down? Does that not matter? She looked genuinely confused. It is not the same thing. This is Haley's once-in-a-lifetime event. And my surgery is just another Tuesday for me? I asked bitterly. You know that is not what I meant. But you have always been the strong one, the independent one. Haley needs more support. In that moment, I realized nothing I could say would change their minds. The pattern established since childhood was too deeply ingrained. In their eyes, Haley's wedding would always outweigh my medical crisis. I left without saying goodbye, finally accepting the truth I had been avoiding for decades. In my family's hierarchy of needs, I would always come last. The weeks leading up to the surgery were a blur of medical appointments, paperwork, and growing isolation. While my parents became increasingly absorbed in wedding preparations, I was dealing with the reality of a major operation that carried significant risks. Every morning began with blood draws and medication adjustments. Dr. Maxwell wanted to optimize my condition before surgery, which meant frequent visits to the hospital for tests and consultations. Nathan rearranged his work schedule to drive me to these appointments, often taking calls in hospital waiting rooms to avoid falling behind on his projects. Meanwhile, my parents' communication dwindled to brief, distracted phone calls that inevitably turned to wedding topics within minutes. How are you feeling, Audrey? My mother would ask. Before immediately continuing, did I tell you about the issue with the floral arrangements? The peonies might not be in season, and Haley is absolutely heartbroken. I stopped sharing my fears with them after one particularly painful conversation where my father checked his watch repeatedly and then cut me off mid-sentence saying he needed to join a conference, all with the destination wedding planner. Even Haley, who initially expressed sympathy about the timing conflict, gradually revealed her true priorities. Is there really no way you can reschedule? She asked during a call 2 weeks before the wedding. Justin's family is asking why my own sister will not be at the wedding. It looks bad. Haley, it is a life-saving surgery. I explained for what felt like the 100th time. If I postpone, I might not survive until the next available date. There was a pause before she responded. I understand. But this is my special day. We have been planning it for so long. And I have been sick for years, I replied, a rare flash of anger breaking through. This did not come out of nowhere. "You always make everything about your health issues," she snapped. "Some of us are trying to live normal lives." She hung up, and we did not speak again until she sent a text a week later about the rehearsal dinner seating chart, making no mention of our argument. The financial aspects of the situation added another layer of pain. While my parents were spending $75,000 on Haley's wedding, they called me with concerns about the cost of my post-surgical care. "The insurance should cover most of it," my father said, "but we think you should plan to cover the out-of-pocket maximum. We have extended ourselves quite a bit with the wedding expenses." I sat on my couch, staring at the stack of medical leave paperwork I had been completing, and felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. Nathan, who had been cooking dinner, overheard the conversation and had to walk out of the room to compose himself. "They are unbelievable," he fumed later. "Absolutely unbelievable." He took on extra shifts at the hospital to help with our expenses, coming home exhausted but never complaining. I watched him fall asleep on the couch night after night, still in his work clothes, and felt both immense gratitude and guilt. Stephanie organized a meal train and a hospital visit schedule with a few other friends and colleagues. Uncle Douglas called regularly, asking practical questions about what I would need after discharge. These acts of kindness highlighted the absence of my immediate family even more starkly. The day before my surgery, my parents finally video called from Maui. They sat on their hotel balcony, the blue ocean visible behind them, both wearing matching floral print outfits for the welcome dinner. "We wanted to wish you luck tomorrow," my mother said brightly. "The resort is just gorgeous. I wish you could see it." "The travel time was worth it," my father added. "Everyone is having a wonderful time." I nodded silently, unable to form words through the lump in my throat. They chatted for a few more minutes about the weather, the food, and Haley's pre-wedding jitters, never once asking about my pre-surgery instructions or how I was feeling. "Well, we should get going," my mother finally said. "We have the rehearsal dinner in 30 minutes. We will call you tomorrow after the ceremony," my father promised. "You will be in our thoughts." After they hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed and sobbed until Nathan found me there, curled into myself like a child. He held me without speaking, understanding that there were no words that could make this betrayal hurt any less. The morning of the surgery arrived with no call from my parents. As Nathan helped me pack my hospital bag, I kept checking my phone until the very last moment. The only message I received was from my mother, sent at 5 a.m. my time, "Thinking of you. Haley looks beautiful." Nothing about my surgery. Nothing about their hopes for my survival. Just a confirmation of what I already knew. In the hierarchy of their concerns, I barely registered. As the nurse inserted my fore and explained the procedure one last time, I closed my eyes and accepted that the family I had been born into was not the family that would see me through this crisis. I would need to move forward with the people who had chosen to stand by me, not those who shared my blood, but had abandoned me when I needed them most. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took effect was the surgical team bustling around me, their faces serious above their masks. Dr. Maxwell squeezed my hand and promised to take good care of me. I tried to smile, but fear overwhelmed me as the drugs pulled me under. I later learned that the surgery lasted nearly 8 hours, twice as long as expected. The cysts were more numerous and complex than the imaging had shown, and at one point, my blood pressure dropped dangerously low. Dr. Maxwell would later tell me that there were moments when they nearly lost me. When I finally woke up in the intensive care unit, my vision blurry and throat raw from the breathing tube, Nathan was right beside me. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, his usually neat hair disheveled. He had not left the hospital since dropping me off for surgery. "You made it," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You scared us for a while there." I tried to speak, but could only manage a weak groan. A nurse approached, checking my vitals and adjusting my pain medication. Through the fog of drugs and pain, I understood enough to know that there had been complications. I spent 3 days in the ICU. Stephanie came every evening after work, bringing magazines and sitting quietly beside me. Uncle Douglas and his wife visited daily, awkwardly but kindly offering support and updates from the outside world. My coworkers sent a massive flower arrangement that brightened the sterile room. My parents did not call until the day after the surgery, and even then, it was a brief conversation mostly focused on how beautiful the wedding had been. They sounded distracted, mentioning they had extended their stay in Maui for a few extra days since they were already there. The ceremony was just perfect, my mother gushed. The sunset provided the most amazing backdrop for their vows. I could barely respond through the pain and medication, but they did not seem to notice my silence. "We will try to visit once we get back," my father said vaguely. "Depends on how the flights work out." Haley texted a wedding photo with the caption, "Missed you there. Recovery going okay?" When I managed to type a brief response about the complications, she replied hours later, "That sounds rough. Justin and I decided to extend our honeymoon by a week. The Maldives is calling our name." Not a word about possibly coming to see me. Not even a phone call. I developed an infection on the 4th day, spiking a dangerous fever that required additional antibiotics and extended my hospital stay. Nathan practically lived in the uncomfortable recliner beside my bed, working remotely when possible and stepping out only for quick showers at home. My parents finally visited a week after my surgery, by which time I had been moved to a regular room. They arrived carrying gift shop flowers and a photo album from the wedding. "We thought you might want to see how everything turned out," my mother said cheerfully, as if I had simply missed a dinner party rather than fighting for my life while they celebrated. They stayed for less than an hour. My father kept checking his watch and emails, while my mother flipped through the wedding album, pointing out details of the decor and Haley's dress. Neither of them asked about my surgery complications or the seriousness of my condition. When a nurse came in to check my surgical drains, my mother winced and looked away, commenting that she had never been good with medical things. Before leaving, my father patted my hand awkwardly and said, "Well, everything worked out, right? You had Nathan here." My mother added, "Haley's wedding was perfect. Wish she could have been there." I smiled weakly, unable to express the hurricane of emotions their visit had triggered. After they left, I broke down completely, sobbing until my surgical incisions burned with pain. Nathan witnessed my breakdown and his usual gentle demeanor hardened. "They do not deserve you," he said firmly. "Not a single bit of you." The next day, when my parents texted about possibly visiting again, Nathan asked if I wanted him to respond. I nodded, too exhausted to deal with them myself. He typed a message stating that I needed rest and would contact them when I felt stronger. It was polite but clear. They were not welcome back until I was ready to see them. Over the next few days, as I slowly improved enough for discharge planning, I had time to reflect on the profound abandonment I had experienced. The contrast between my parents' behavior and the dedication shown by Nathan, Stephanie, and even my uncle could not have been more stark. Dr. Maxwell visited the day before my discharge, reviewing my recovery instructions and medication schedule. "You have a wonderful support system in Nathan and your friends," she commented, smiling at him across the room. "Yes," I agreed, the realization crystallizing. "I really do." She hesitated, then added gently, "Sometimes the family we create is more important than the family we are born into. I have seen it many times in my patients." Her words stayed with me as I was wheeled out of the hospital 2 weeks after my surgery, Nathan carefully helping me into the car. I was going home to heal, not just my body but my heart as well. I decided then that I would no longer chase the approval and love my parents had always withheld. The empty space they had left would be filled with people who had proven their loyalty and care when it mattered most. The 6 months following my surgery were both the most physically challenging and emotionally transformative period of my life. My recovery was slow and painful, marked by weekly follow-up appointments, medication adjustments, and gradual physical therapy. Throughout this time, my parents' involvement remained superficial at best. They called occasionally, usually with updates about Haley and Justin's honeymoon adventures or their own social engagements. When they did ask about my health, their questions were surface level, and they quickly changed the subject if I mentioned anything too medical. They visited exactly twice during my recovery, both times for less than an hour. Bringing store-bought cookies and awkward conversation. During their second visit, my mother actually checked her watch and mentioned they needed to leave soon to attend a cocktail party at their country club. The contrast between their detachment and the dedication of my chosen family could not have been more pronounced. Nathan took family medical leave for the first month after my discharge, handling everything from medication management to wound care. When he returned to work, he arranged his schedule to be home for my important appointments. Stephanie organized a rotation of friends who checked in regularly, bringing meals, running errands, or simply providing company during the long days of recovery. My coworkers sent care packages and kept me connected to office happenings without pressure to return before I was ready. Uncle Douglas and his wife invited us for Sunday dinners once I was mobile enough, providing a family connection that felt genuine and unconditional. Over homemade pot roast and apple pie, they shared stories about my father as a young man, helping me understand the family dynamics that had shaped him without excusing his behavior toward me. As my physical strength returned, I found myself reevaluating every aspect of my life. Nathan and I had many late-night conversations about what we wanted our future to look like. 3 months after my surgery, he suggested something unexpected. "What would you think about moving to Seattle?" he asked one evening as we sat on our small balcony. "There is an opening in the healthcare system there that would be perfect for me, and you mentioned your company has an office there too." The idea of a fresh start, away from the constant reminder of my parents' betrayal, was immediately appealing. Within weeks, we had both applied for transfers and begun apartment hunting online. For months post-surgery, as I was finally regaining my energy and returning to part-time work, Nathan took me to a small Japanese garden we both loved. Under a blooming cherry tree, he got down on one knee. "Audrey," he said, his voice steady but emotional, "this past year has shown me what really matters in life. I promise to always prioritize you, to stand by you through whatever comes next, and to help create the family you deserve. Will you marry me?" The ring was modest but perfect, a simple solitaire that caught the sunlight. I said yes through happy tears, knowing without doubt that this man had shown me what true family meant. We planned a small wedding for just before our move to Seattle. I did not invite my parents or Haley. The decision brought both grief and relief, a combination of emotions my therapist assured me was normal given the circumstances. The ceremony took place in a botanical garden with only 30 guests, the people who had actually shown up for us. Stephanie was my maid of honor, and Uncle Douglas walked me down the aisle. We wrote our own vows, promising to create a home where both of us would always feel valued and loved. Our move to Seattle marked the beginning of a new chapter. My company not only approved my transfer but offered me a promotion to lead their patient advocacy program, recognizing the perspective my personal experience had given me. Nathan thrived in his new role, quickly earning the respect of his colleagues. We bought a small house with a view of Puget Sound, gradually making it our own. I started a support group for transplant patients and their families, turning my painful experience into something that could help others navigate similar challenges. Contact with my parents became increasingly limited. I sent polite holiday and birthday cards, but declined their occasional invitations to visit. When they pressed, I was honest but calm. "I need more time. The choices you made during my surgery showed me where I stand in your priorities." My father responded with defensive justifications, while my mother tried emotional manipulation. "We have always loved both our daughters equally," she insisted. "You are tearing apart this family with your grudge." I no longer argued or tried to make them understand. I simply established boundaries and stuck to them, a skill my therapist had helped me develop. "This is not about punishment," I explained during one difficult phone call. "This is about me protecting my well-being." Haley occasionally reached out, usually when she wanted something or was fighting with our parents. Her marriage to Justin was already showing cracks, their whirlwind romance fading in the face of real-life challenges. I maintained polite distance, unwilling to be drawn back into the family drama. 3 years passed in this way. Nathan and I built a life rich with meaningful work, genuine friendships, and plans for the future. My health stabilized, and while I would always need monitoring, my remaining kidney was functioning well. We started discussing having children, a possibility that had once seemed out of reach. My final therapy session during this period was particularly significant. My therapist, a wise woman named Dr. Carter, asked me a question that crystallized everything. What does forgiveness mean to you in this context? I thought carefully before answering. I think I have reached a point where I do not wish them ill. I understand they are flawed people who made choices based on lifelong patterns. But forgiveness does not mean I need to give them the power to hurt me again. She nodded. And what about moving forward? What does that look like? It means building my life based on what I value, not what I lack, I replied. It means recognizing that while they will always be my biological family, they are not my emotional home anymore. As I left her office that day, I felt a lightness I had not experienced since before my diagnosis. I was not defined by what had been denied me, but by what I had created for myself despite everything. I had no idea then that my newfound peace would soon be tested in a way I never anticipated. Almost 5 years to the day after my surgery, Nathan and I were enjoying a quiet Sunday morning in our Seattle home. The Pacific Northwest spring was in full bloom, our garden bursting with colors we had carefully cultivated over the years. As we sat on our deck drinking coffee and reading, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Nathan went to answer while I refilled our cups. When he did not immediately return, I wandered to the front door, curious about the delay. There in our entryway stood my parents, looking older and somehow smaller than I remembered. My mother's carefully maintained blonde hair now showed substantial gray, and my father's once commanding posture was slightly stooped. Their designer clothes seemed worn rather than crisp, and the confidence they had always exuded was noticeably diminished. "Audrey," my mother said, her voice wavering. "You look wonderful." Nathan stood protectively near me, his expression carefully neutral, but his body language on alert. I reached for his hand, drawing strength from his presence. "This is unexpected," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why are you here?" My father cleared his throat. "Can we come in and talk? It has been a long trip." Against my better judgment, I nodded and led them to our living room. They sat stiffly on the edge of our sofa, taking in the comfortable home we had created. Family photos lined our walls, none of which included them. After an awkward silence, my father spoke. "We have had some financial setbacks. Significant ones." My mother jumped in, her words tumbling out. "Your father made some investments that did not work out. The firm asked him to retire early. We had to sell the house." I listened without expression as they explained their situation. My father had invested heavily in a development project that collapsed amid fraud allegations. Their savings had been decimated, and they were facing potential legal issues related to the investment. They had sold their home but still had substantial debt. "Haley and Justin divorced last year," my mother added. "She moved back home with us, but now there is no home. She has a 2-year-old son." My father said, "Your nephew Jackson. You have never met him." I absorbed this information silently. Part of me felt a distant sadness for their situation, but another part recognized the familiar pattern emerging. They had not contacted me in nearly a year, and now they appeared with a crisis, expecting what? "We need help, Audrey," my father finally said, the words clearly difficult for his pride. "Temporary financial assistance until we can get back on our feet. Maybe even a place to stay for a short while." My mother nodded eagerly. "We know you have done well here. Your house is lovely, and there seems to be enough space." Nathan's hand tightened around mine, but he remained silent, allowing me to handle this as I chose. "Let me understand," I said slowly. "You have barely communicated with me for 5 years. You abandoned me during a life-threatening surgery to attend a wedding. Now you show up unannounced because you need money and possibly a place to live." My father flushed. "That is ancient history, Audrey. Families move past these things. We are in crisis." "The way I was in crisis during my surgery?" I asked quietly. My mother's expression hardened slightly. "I think you are being unnecessarily cruel. We made one mistake years ago, and you have punished us ever since. Is that not enough? I felt a familiar pain resurface, but it no longer had the power it once did. You think my distance has been about punishment? What else would you call it? My father demanded. We are your parents. Family forgives. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I will need time to think about what, if anything, I can offer you. Where are you staying in Seattle? They exchanged a glance. We drove straight here from the airport, my mother admitted. We assumed, that I would immediately take you in, I finished for her. That I would drop everything because you finally need me instead of the other way around. My father stood abruptly. This was clearly a mistake. We should not have come. Nathan spoke for the first time. Sir, please sit down. No one is saying we cannot help. Audrey just needs time to process this sudden request. It is a lot to take in. Reluctantly, my father sat back down. I excused myself to the kitchen, Nathan following behind. What do you want to do? He asked quietly, his loyalty evident in his eyes. Whatever you decide, I support you completely. I leaned against the counter, emotions swirling. They have nowhere to go tonight, do they? Probably not, he admitted. But that does not mean they get to crash into our lives and make demands. I nodded, thinking. We have the guest room. They can stay tonight, maybe tomorrow. I need time to figure out what the right thing is here, not just for them but for me. When we returned to the living room, I offered the temporary accommodation with clear boundaries. You can stay in our guest room for 2 nights while you figure out your next steps. I need time to think about any further assistance. The relief on their faces was immediately replaced by confusion when I continued. And I need to understand something. Did you try asking Haley for help before coming to me? My mother looked down at her hands. Haley is not in a position to help right now. She is struggling as a single mother. What went unspoken was clear. I had always been the responsible one. The one expected to fix problems. Even now, after everything, I was still being cast in that role. That evening, after showing my parents to the guest room, Nathan and I talked late into the night about what to do. Their arrival had disrupted the peace we had built, bringing old wounds to the surface. They have not changed, I whispered as we lay in bed. Even now, they cannot acknowledge the depth of what they did. So, what do you want to do? Nathan asked gently. I thought about it for a long time. I want to help in a way that maintains my boundaries and my self-respect. I want to show compassion without enabling the same unhealthy dynamics. And mostly, I want to act in a way that I can be proud of, regardless of what they do. Nathan smiled in the darkness. That sounds like the Audrey I married. The next morning, I called a family therapist I knew through my work and explained the situation. By afternoon, I had made my decision about how to respond to my parents' request, one that would honor both my healing and my values. 2 days after my parents' unexpected arrival, I asked them to meet me at a coffee shop near our house. The neutral territory felt important for what I needed to say. Nathan offered to come, but I decided this was a conversation I needed to have alone. I arrived early, selecting a quiet corner table and ordering a chamomile tea to calm my nerves. When my parents walked in, I noticed they had made an effort with their appearance, looking more like their former polished selves despite their circumstances. Thank you for giving us a place to stay these past 2 nights, my mother said as they sat down with their coffees. Have you had time to think about our situation? My father cut straight to the point. We were hoping for an answer about financial assistance. Our credit cards are nearly maxed out. I took a deep breath, centering myself before responding. I had rehearsed this conversation with Nathan, knowing it would be challenging. I have thought a lot about how to respond to your request. I began. And I have made a decision about how I can help. They leaned forward expectantly. I am not going to give you money directly, I said calmly. Instead, I have paid for 6 months of weekly family therapy sessions with Dr. Jennifer West. She specializes in family reconciliation and financial crisis management. Their expressions shifted from anticipation to confusion. Therapy, my father repeated incredulously. We need financial help, not someone to talk to about our feelings. I held up my hand. Let me finish. Drive West also works with financial counselors who can help you develop a sustainable plan. The therapy is a package deal with the financial guidance. My mother's lips thinned. Audrey, this is not what we asked for. I know, I acknowledged. But it is what I am offering. If you want to rebuild a relationship with me and receive any future support, this is my condition. This is how you treat your parents in crisis, my father demanded, his voice rising slightly. We changed your diapers, put you through college, helped with your medical bills for years. I met his gaze steadily. And I appreciate those things. But they do not erase what happened 5 years ago, and they do not entitle you to dictate the terms of our relationship now. My mother tried a different approach, tears welling in her eyes. We made one mistake, Audrey. One mistake in a lifetime of parenting. How long will you punish us for it? This is not about punishment, I said firmly. This is about healing. All of us. The pattern in our family has been unhealthy for decades, long before my surgery. If you want things to be different, we need to address the root causes. My father scoffed. And you think some therapist can fix everything with talk? No, I replied honestly. I think therapy is just a start. The real work happens in how we treat each other moving forward. But it is a necessary first step if you want my help. They exchanged glances, clearly disappointed by my response. I could see them calculating, wondering if they could change my mind or if they should look elsewhere for assistance. After a moment, I continued. There is one more thing you should know. I have established an education fund for Jackson, my nephew. It is in his name only, to be used for his future schooling. That is non-negotiable and separate from any other help I might provide. My mother's eyes widened. You set up a college fund for a child you have never met? Yes, I said simply. Because he is innocent in all this. Whatever issues exist between us should not affect his opportunities. My father's expression softened slightly, the first genuine reaction I had seen from him. That is unexpectedly generous. It is what a family member does, I replied pointedly. They sat in silence, absorbing my terms. I knew they had expected me to simply write a check or offer our spare room indefinitely. The boundary I had established was not what they wanted. But it was what I needed to maintain my own well-being. We need to discuss this privately, my father finally said. I nodded, standing up. The first therapy appointment is scheduled for Thursday at 4 p.m. I will text you the address. If you decide not to go, I will understand, but my offer of help stands as presented. I will not be changing the terms. As I gathered my purse, my mother reached for my hand. Audrey, wait. Do you truly think we can fix things? After all this time. I looked at her, seeing for the first time the vulnerability beneath her polished exterior. I think it depends on whether we all want to try for the right reasons. Real healing is not about going back to how things were. It is about creating something new that is healthier for everyone. I walked out of the coffee shop with my head high, feeling neither triumph nor regret. The ball was in their court now, and whatever they decided, I had acted according to my values rather than from hurt or vengeance. 1 year later, much had changed. My parents did attend that first therapy session, though I suspect it was initially more about financial desperation than genuine desire for reconciliation. The process was messy and difficult, with many setbacks and heated moments. Drive West helped them secure temporary housing through a program for seniors in financial crisis, and the financial counselor assisted them in filing for bankruptcy protection and developing a modest but sustainable budget. My father found part-time work as a legal consultant, and my mother took a position at a local department store, a significant step down from her former social status, but necessary for their survival. More surprisingly, they continued with therapy even after the initial 6 months I had funded. The process forced conversations that had been avoided for decades, not just about my surgery, but about the patterns of favoritism and emotional neglect that had defined our family dynamics. Haley eventually joined some sessions, bringing little Jackson along. Meeting my nephew for the first time was a bittersweet experience, his innocent smile containing echoes of our shared genetics despite the years of separation. The most significant moment came during a session 6 months into the process, when my father finally offered a genuine apology for missing my surgery. I convinced myself it was about the wedding deposits and guests, he admitted, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. But the truth is, I was terrified of seeing you so ill, of facing the possibility of losing you. It was easier to focus on Haley's wedding, where everything was celebration and nothing was at risk. My mother nodded tearfully. We failed you, Audrey. Completely failed you when you needed us most. I do not expect you to forget that, but I hope someday you might find it in your heart to forgive us. Their words did not magically erase the past, but they created an opening for something new to grow. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. Now, a year after their unexpected arrival on our doorstep, our family has transformed in ways I never imagined possible. My parents live in a modest apartment not far from us. We have dinner together twice a month, conversations sometimes still awkward but increasingly authentic. Haley has shown the most surprising growth, apologizing for her self-centeredness and working to develop a genuine, sisterly relationship for the first time in our lives. She recently started community college courses in early childhood education, inspired by Raising Jackson. As for Nathan and me, we are expecting our first child, a daughter due in 3 months. The journey to this pregnancy was complicated by my kidney issues, but with careful medical supervision, we have reached the 3rd trimester with mother and baby both healthy. My parents know they will not be the primary grandparent figures in our daughter's life, that role being reserved for Nathan's wonderfully supportive parents. But they have earned a place in our family circle through consistent effort and respect for our boundaries. The greatest lesson I have learned through this journey is that family is not defined by obligation or blood alone. True family consists of the people who show up for you, who prioritize your well-being alongside their own, who see you clearly and love you anyway. Sometimes those people share your DNA. Sometimes they do not. What matters is the choice to treat each other with compassion and respect, day after day, especially when it is difficult. I do not regret setting firm boundaries with my parents, nor do I regret offering them a path to reconciliation when they needed help. Both decisions came from a place of self-respect and integrity rather than vengeance or martyrdom. If there is one thing I would want you to take from my story, it is this: you deserve to be prioritized by the people who claim to love you. And if they cannot or will not do that, you have every right to create a family of choice who will. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? How did you balance compassion with self-protection? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of healing and transformation. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, family is what we make it, not just what we are born into.